Hi everyone, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and if you've noticed, we've got a new project hanging on the wall. I want to tell you all about that right after this. Good morning everyone, and welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today I have hung up our Miss Karen project. This is the one we've been working on for the last few weeks, and we've been putting this pattern together into this project. The pattern was designed by Erin Russick, and I really like it. I liked Miss Kelly. Miss Kelly was a little more difficult and could be frustrating since it was the first full-scale type pattern that I had tried. But Miss Karen was a delight to work with, and I learned some new techniques and some things that really worked well, and I also learned what didn't work well. But I want to tell you a little bit about its current status and what our next steps are. I think from the last time you saw this, I have added the borders to this project. Now what I decided to do was add a double border to this, and I used the dark green fabric with the little dragonflies printed on it. That's the same fabric we used here for the darkest leaves and for the base of the flowers. And it really changes the look of this dramatically. And then we use this medium green here, almost like a mat in a frame. So it gives a little bit of distinction, transitioning between the design and then the frame of the pattern. I did this with mitered borders, and we covered a little bit about the mitered borders in the last video, and I was showing you how I did one of them. Now, to be honest with you, doing this with the two borders already hooked together was a little more challenging, and as I was sewing that diagonal seam, in some of these corners it looked a little funky, and it required some clipping of the fabric from the back side. But the magic happened when it was pressed, because pressing it kind of put all of those layers exactly where they needed to be and compacted them so they laid flat, and the forms and the angles really molded into where they were supposed to be. I noticed this is hanging a little crooked. I think that's just, it's not pinned up there exactly straight. It'll do much better once it's, if it were pinned down here, it would actually do better. But we're just going to leave it like this for now. And you can see a little bit of the pattern underneath. So this is just the top. It has not been sandwiched and it has not been quilted. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But to me, the thing that was most striking is looking at it from a distance, getting away from it, you really begin to see the squareness of this pattern, and how if this were used as the center medallion of a quilt, how striking that would be to have this surrounded by a bunch of other blocks. It really would be quite something to look at. And although this particular pattern does not have as many colors, it is still very vibrant, and you can really tell the difference between the border and the pattern. I really like it. I like how it turned out. Like I said, it was easier than Miss Kelly. It was quicker to put together. It was much easier to do videos of because it was a lot of the same stuff. So I could cover different aspects of the pattern and then do the rest of them behind the scenes and then just put it all together. So from that perspective, it was really a joy. Now, let's talk about what we're going to do with this. I think that what I'm going to do, my plan right now, is to do a crosshatch on the white part of the of the design here, just like we did with Miss Kelly. And it's been a while. I don't remember how big that was, so we're going to check. That was a 2-inch crosshatch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 2-inch crosshatch that is strictly in the white areas. I'm not going to crosshatch over the applique. It's going to be as if the applique was set on top of the crossed hatch fabric. And actually, I don't see why you couldn't do that. If you wanted to cross hatch, let's back up a minute. You're a long arm quilter. I don't see a reason why you couldn't quilt this background and then put the applique on. It would be a little bit harder to use a light box to see through, but you could certainly do that if you wanted to. But for me, I'm just going to do it now. I am going to hand quilt it. Now, where I'm going to deviate from Miss Kelly is in the quilting of the frame. Excuse me, it's springtime and the pollen is out and it's just playing havoc with my sinuses this year. But I'm going to do a different kind of design in the border here. And let me just warn you that I can see by this hanging here that it's really much bigger than Miss Kelly. So we are going to make this somewhere between this size and the size of Miss Kelly. So we're probably going to have at least an inch off each side trimmed up. But we're going to use some other kind of quilting pattern in this, and I'm going to do some research to see if maybe we could find a pattern with a dragonfly or if there's some other pattern. And it is entirely possible that instead of quilting with white thread like we will for this, that we will go with a different color. And let me tell you that a lot of times I don't go with other colors because I'm concerned about the backing of the project. And if I flip a quilt over, what the quilting is going to look like on the back side, where part of it's white and part of it's another color. But I have green thread that will do great to quilt on. It's a little bit lighter than this fabric, but I think that in a single strand of thread, it's going to blend in beautifully and give us just enough change in that we'll see the definition in that quilting, and that's the Americana quilting thread. So it's possible that we will quilt in the border with this. And the reason I can do this is these will be exclusively wall hangings and you never see the other side. Okay, so we've got this project finished and we're ready to move on. What are we going to do? Well, your guess is as good as mine right now, because I took a few minutes before we started filming to look at what I had on hand for batting and backing. And I thought briefly about using this fabric for the backing, but I've decided against it. This is just kind of a darker gray. This is the fabric we use for our stained glass project. And if we do another stained glass project, I want this to use as the background for it, so those pieces will be matched and could be hung together. So that's out. Now, I do have some white fabric that I can put, and I do have some white fabric that I found that I have no idea what it is. I don't know if it's all cotton, if it's a cotton blend, if it's a muslin. I'm not sure, so I've got to do a little research and maybe a little experiment on the fabric to see if I can determine it. I don't want to use a poly cotton blend because should it ever need to be washed, that backing will not shrink at all, and it's going to be kind of wonky on the back. So I don't know about backing, and I might just decide to go buy a piece of something, because a yard of fabric will back this. And I should have plenty of fabric for the binding out of the green. So the next consideration is batting, and give me just a second because I want to show you what I came up with. So when I started pulling the batting out for this project, I realized, number one, I've got a problem. My closet where I store all of these fabrics and batting is an absolutely disaster. And it really needs my attention. So I'm going to put on my list of things to do is getting there and clean that closet out and try to organize it and label things so I know what I'm looking at. But when I pulled out batting, what I found was I have a lot of pieces like this. I cut a project out of this, and I've got this L-shaped piece of batting. That's not going to work for this project. I need a piece of batting that's about 36 by 36 or 30 by 30, something like that. And I've got a lot of these strips, and these are clearly where the project has been cut out of a piece of batting, and this is what's left over. These are the edges of the batting. And as I go in here, they all commonly seem to be about that big. Then I did find a bigger piece of batting, and I think the possibility exists that I could take this one and piece it together to use for this. That could be done. And if it were not a wall hanging and it wasn't so focused on the applique design, I probably would do that without any reservation. But I'm not sure I want to use a piece batting for a project that I've worked so hard on, and we really want people to look at it and enjoy it. Its purpose is not to keep us warm. Its purpose is for our visual enjoyment. And then I ran across this piece, which this is going to work great. I don't even know what this is from, but it was rolled up on a bolt from at some point. Now, let me tell you something else. I have a whole container full of batting strips about that big. And I know there are other projects that you can use where you're making a rug and you're using these strips of batting. So I may look into that as a way to use my batting scraps. And I could also use that one piece of batting and my batting tape to join those together to give me a pretty good piece of batting, just not for this project. So we've got that. We still need to figure out what we're going to do for the backing of this project. It may be that I can't get in here and get all this done by the time that I want to move forward with this, and I just choose to go buy a yard of something to get us moving. That's a real possibility. So we'll kind of see how that plays out and what is out there on sale that I can get my hands on. But anyway, we'll decide on a backing fabric and move forward with that. Now my plan is to hand quilt this, and I will be putting this on my Grace Easy 3 frame. And my intention right now is to set it up here in the studio. I'm going to have to move some things around. But it's a small project, and I can put that frame together in its smallest size and be able to have it here. I've done that before. And when I do that, I'm going to film it again, because for some reason there must be a lot of Grace frames out there still that keep getting recycled in the secondary market because that is one of my most popular videos, is people coming to see how it's done, how it's put up, what you're using. Are you having to replace parts? What are you using? So we will be focusing on that in an upcoming video, and then we will focus on the hand quilting as well. I hope you've enjoyed this, and let me move this so we can once again see Miss Karen. And I again have loved doing this project. I love the way it looks. It's very, very cute to me, and a really nice applique project, especially for someone who is either inexperienced in applique or is slightly experienced in applique and is looking for things that are just challenging to start off with. And that's where I would classify this as coming in. So if you enjoy applique, or you're looking for a new quilting adventure, give this one a shot. You'll be able to find the link to the pattern in the introduction video to this project, and I'll link that below. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Have a great week.